"Can I play the piano for a piece of food?" They laughed, not knowing the little girl was a piano genius. Maya stood outside the upscale restaurant, peering in through the wide glass panes at people dining. Her stomach growled loudly. It had been 2 days since she last ate. The scent of garlic butter, toasted bread, and rich soup drifted out each time the door opened, only deepening the ache of hunger. Inside was Bella Vista, crisp white tablecloths, gleaming glasses, polished suits, and bursts of laughter. Maya looked down at herself, torn jeans at the knees, an oversized shirt stained with old blotches, shoes held together by duct tape, barely clinging to their shape. In her arms, she clutched a worn canvas bag like a talisman. Inside were a few sheets of old music, the only relic left from her life before everything collapsed. A man in a suit passed by, glancing at her with disdain before stepping aside as if afraid of contamination. Maya had grown used to such looks on the streets. People labeled you dangerous or filthy. But she wasn't dangerous. She was just hungry and exhausted. Nights beneath awnings or under bridges, afternoons scavenging for food, behind supermarkets, rare moments when someone pressed bread into her hands. She watched a family inside steaming pasta, warm bread, children laughing, parents smiling tenderly. A scene too far removed from her reality. Then Maya sawed a black piano in the corner, old and dusty, with someone's coat tossed carelessly on top. Her heart quickened. She knew the piano. She had played since she was little, taught by her father. He used to say, "You have magic in your fingertips, you make the piano sing." That was before everything went off, course before her father died. Her mother fell ill, the house was lost, and Maya ended up on the streets. She stood there for a long time, imagining herself seated at the keys, music flowing like a stream, faces softening as they listened. A thought rose clear and sharp, like the first note of a melody. Go in. Ask to play. Maybe they'll give you some food. The heavy door opened with a chime. Warm air rushed over her face. The aromas wrapped around her empty stomach like silk. Heads turned instantly. Frowns, whispers, flickers of disapproval. A man in black approached name-tag reading manager. His voice was cold. "You don't belong here. This is a fine restaurant. Leave at once." Maya's hands trembled, her face burned, but she didn't turn back. "Please, just one question." He folded his arms. What Maya pointed to the corner, "I know how to play the piano." "Please let me play, in exchange for some food." He laughed, a sharp, short sound that caught the attention of nearby tables. "You want to beg with a piano, like some street act," he said, loudly enough for others to hear. Maya nodded, soft but steady. "I can play, I promise." Murmurs rippled. "Next, she'll dance for dessert, call the police." The whole room now watched as if entertainment had walked in off the street. The manager scanned the diners, noting their curious eyes. A smirk tugged at his lips. "Fine. 5 minutes. If you're bad, you leave. No food, nothing." Maya nodded quickly, grateful, as though someone had just tossed her the only rope in a raging current. He walked to the piano, brushed off the coat, and lifted the lid. The ivory keys were yellowed, chipped in places, but the instrument was alive, ready to sing. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with forced humor, "tonight we have a special performance." Polite but mocking claps followed. Maya walked slowly to the bench. Her legs felt like cotton, but the cushion beneath her brought a breath of relief so different from cold concrete nights. She placed her hands above the keys without pressing down. Closed her eyes. Her father's voice echoed in memory. "Music comes from the heart. Let your fingers speak for it." When she opened her eyes, she saw phones, raised diners ready to capture the show of a homeless girl at the piano. She took a deep breath. She would not play for them. She would play for herself. She would play for her father. The first note rang out soft, tender like a bird testing the sky after a storm. Her right hand sketched a fragile melody, the left followed with a heartbeat of harmony. The room still clinked with silverware and chatter, but the piano cast a shimmer of moonlight over it all. Something shifted small but undeniable, like the moment when a whisper at your ear makes you stop and listen. Maya didn't rush. She built slowly long breaths of phrases. A note held a second too long a tremor in the bass that pulled listeners closer. Her eyes closed again, but inside she saw vividly a still lake at night, her father beside her on the bench, his heavy hand guiding her to the landing point. What poured from her was not mere technique. It was the hunger, the fear of being chased away, the shame of being seen as nothing. All of it flowed into the pauses, the pressure, the silences between notes. In one corner, conversation faltered. A child stopped eating spoon-frozen mid-air. A passing waiter slowed, careful not to disturb the fragile fabric of sound she stretched across the room. Even the manager, the ringmaster of mockery, found himself checking his watch less often. The enchantment unfolded quietly but decisively. At first, one table near the piano fell silent, then another. Then, like snow settling, the background noise dropped away in pieces. Maya Carter didn't conquer the room with volume. She transformed its air. The high notes she pressed shimmered like dusted moonlight. The low ones throbbed like a heartbeat caught between fear and anticipation. The head chef stepped out, ladle still in hand. The dishwasher leaned against the doorway, rubber gloves dripping. All of them were pulled beneath an invisible dome her music was building. Maya shifted. Debussy Clair de Lune misspelled on her worn sheets, but still luminous, flowed like rippling water, then dissolved into a Chopin nocturne, a night layered with shadows, shadows of regret, of fragility, of late warmth. Her technique wasn't for show, it served emotion. Her right hand sang legato like a human voice, her left breathed life into the story. In crescendos, the sound didn't break, it blossomed. In hushes, she let silence speak a heartbeat longer enough for someone in the room to exhale softly. A child stopped chewing, bred eyes wide first, encounter with a feeling unnamed. A woman in the corner dabbed her eyes with a napkin. An old man by the window gripped the edge of his cloth as though holding something from slipping away. And most of all, the map of power in the room redrew itself. Where Blake Turner once controlled the air with sarcasm, now Maya Carter held the crowd's heartbeat with quiet and resonance. 15 minutes passed like a season. She closed with a lullaby David Carter had once guided her through in her earliest lessons, simple but heavy with love. The final note didn't break. It drifted upward, vanishing like thin smoke into the ceiling, and in the perfect circle of silence that followed the entire room stood still, a rare silence in a place of menus and reservations. Applause, one person, two, then the whole room. But this was no longer the mocking clapping of her introduction. It was acknowledgement. Blake Turner approached awkward like a director who had dropped his mask. Miss, I'm sorry. Truly, that was incredible. Where did you learn to play? Maya rose, knees trembling. My father taught me. Please, order whatever you want. It's on the house. A few diners brushed her arm gently as she passed. Thank you. That was magic. You made me remember my grandmother. She used to play for me. A hot bowl of soup, rich with chicken and diced vegetables and fresh bread from the oven, sat before her. Maya ate slowly as her father once taught, hungry, but measured, never desperate. Warmth spread from tongue to stomach to chest, but the truest warmth came from the kind eyes surrounding her. For the first time in months, she felt she belonged somewhere. And in a corner, one pair of eyes saw her differently. Dr. Ellen Ross' silver hair, gaze trained by decades of listening. 40 years of teaching music had taught her the difference between skilled playing and true playing. Maya hadn't just struck the right notes, hadn't just executed a flawless piece. She had shifted the entire room out of itself, pulled each person out of their social costume and into one naked question. Do you still know how to listen? At that moment, Ellen made a decision she must speak to this girl. Talent like this could not be left on the street. It needed shelter, a mentor, a plan. Ellen waited until Maya finished her meal, then stepped forward, voice steady. "Young lady, may I speak with you a moment?" Maya looked up wary from habit, but Ellen's eyes held no pity, no annoyance, only respect. "I don't want to cause trouble. Not at all. Quite the opposite. You just did something extraordinary. My name is Ellen Ross. I've taught music for 40 years. It's been a long time since I've heard a heart speak through the piano like that." They sat. Ellen didn't pry into her hardships. She asked about music, how her father taught, which passages she loved, why she let that final silence linger. Maya answered, halting at first, then more fluid, as though slipping into a second language. When they rose, Ellen's words were quiet but weighty. "Tomorrow, if you're willing, come to my home. There's a grand piano there, there's warmth, and I think you need both to keep speaking." In Maya's mind, two images clashed, the damp underside of a bridge and a music room with the lid lifted. She had learned not to trust promises too sweet, but Ellen Ross was different. She carried the steadiness of someone who had lived her words for a lifetime. "Yes," Maya nodded. "But if I feel uncomfortable, I'll leave." Ellen smiled. "That's always your right." That night, Maya stepped back onto the street clutching her canvas bag with breakfast money. Ellen had slipped into her hand, and an unfamiliar feeling beneath her ribs, something like hope sprouting. Passing a shop window, she caught her reflection, still the oversized shirt, the taped-up shoes, but her posture had changed, as if gravity itself had eased. The next morning, Maya followed the address scribbled on a napkin. The street led into a quiet neighborhood trees, whispering as if to reassure her. She stopped before a light brick house clutching her canvas bag. Before she could knock, the door opened. Dr. Ellen Ross stood there, silver hair neatly pinned, eyes with the kind of gaze that made you suddenly remember how to breathe deeply. "You're here," she said softly. "Come in." The air smelled faintly of waffles and laundry soap. A sky-blue carpet lined the hallway, one wall hung with family photos, smiling faces not exaggerated. Ellen led Maya through the living room into a bright room, a small bed with white sheets, a window overlooking hydrangeas, a wooden shelf in the corner with toiletries still sealed. "This is your room," Ellen said, pointing to a door. "Bathroom. Towels are here, a few spare clothes in the closet. After breakfast, sleep a while. This afternoon we'll go down to the music room." Maya nodded, whispered thanks. In the bathroom mirror, she saw a girl with tangled hair, hollowed cheeks from long hunger eyes, both old and young. Warm water ran washing away the dust of the streets, washing off the layer of not belonging clinging to her skin. When she returned, breakfast waited on a tray, eggs, toast, sliced fruit, a glass of milk. She ate slowly, trying to keep rhythm as she had at Bella Vista, though her hands trembled at times. That afternoon, Ellen brought her to the music room. The polished wood floor shone like a lake. At its center stood a black grand piano lid, slightly open. Maya stopped a few steps away, heart pounding like hands tapping a table. "Would you like to try?" Ellen asked. Maya stepped forward, sat down, touched the keys. A clean, rich sound filled the air so full she had to close her eyes. Unexpectedly, tears spilled. She pressed her forehead against the back of her hand, not from sadness, but because too much came rushing back at once, the smell of her old music room, her father's footsteps, her mother's spoon tapping the pot in the kitchen. Ellen stood beside her, silent, letting her cry it through. When Maya finally wiped her face and gave a sheepish smile, she whispered, "I'm sorry." Ellen shook her head gently. "In this house, you never apologize for crying." A schedule appeared on the fridge: 7:00 breakfast, 8:00, 10:00 technique and scales, 10:00 break, 10:15, 12:00 new pieces, 12:00 lunch, 1:33 knazo structure and counting, 3:00 walk, break, 4:60 musicality and tone, no practice after 8 p.m. Music needs a healthy body and a clear mind, Ellen said. Starvation doesn't make you play deeper. The days that followed, Maya practiced like a patient gardener. Fingers softened, wrists loosened, her spine straightened from old bad posture. Ellen never hovered or scolded. She sat behind her, offering short, precise comments. Let the phrase breathe half a second longer. Balance the bass, let the melody lead. Here, think of moonlight, not stage lights. Each note built a foundation beneath her. That first night she slept a full 8 hours. In her dream, her father's voice. You don't need to run fast. You need to know where you're going. She woke with hands no longer numb. Looking down, she saw the calluses from cold nights on the street beginning to fade. At lunch, Ellen shared stories of former students, some brilliant but reckless, burning out, some steady and slow, who endured and thrived. You, she smiled, are the second kind. On Thursday evening, as Maya poured water in the kitchen, Ellen entered with a folder. Her face carried the weight of important news. They sat at the table, a small salt bowl and a vase of wildflowers between them. I called the Metropolitan Academy, Ellen said. Some of the faculty remember the little girl who once played at the Children's Conservatory. They want to hear you. But... She paused. Marcus Sterling, the head of piano, refused. He said the academy isn't a place to fix lives, that a child with such a long break would lack the discipline for the program. The name felt cold as metal. Maya stayed silent, fingers turning her cup. So, I can't audition. Ellen shook her head. They argued. Finally, Sterling offered what he calls a challenge, 5 consecutive days. Each day he gives you an advanced level piece. You have 24 hours to prepare, then perform it before the faculty the next day. If you succeed all 5, he'll personally recommend you for a full scholarship. If you fail, he'll oppose you, and his voice carries enormous weight not just here. Maya set down the cup. In her mind, images collided, the piano being carried out of her home, her mother clutching her father's photo like a life raft, rainy nights under awnings, the mocking whispers at Bella Vista, the faces of those who truly listened. I want to try, she said, quiet but steady. Ellen studied her, then nodded slowly. All right, but we go step by step. We don't sprint until we collapse on day 3. We must arrive at day 5 with a heart still beating strong. They laid out a plan on paper, dividing pieces into small sections, marking death spots for focused practice, setting timers for 50-minute sessions, keeping a journal of concentration levels by the hour. When you feel tempted to push 10 more minutes at night, Ellen warned, remember your brain needs sleep to store memory where it belongs. Maya nodded, copying each line as if relearning how to live methodically. When she turned off the light, she lay still, listening to her heartbeat slow. For the first time in a long while, she didn't think about where she'd sleep that night. She thought about the first note of tomorrow. Sunday morning, they walked through the park. Ellen pointed at new leaves sprouting. Everything takes time. Maya smiled. In the afternoon, they browsed a farmer's market, bought fruit and bread. That evening, Ellen roasted chicken smoke curling into the kitchen like the overture of a hard week ahead. Before bed, Maya opened her father's old music sheets, turning each fragile page. In the margin of one piece, faint pencil marks read, "You'll know when it's time to stop and when it's time to fly. She closed the book, placed it on her nightstand like a thin scripture. Monday was coming rushing at her like a train. Monday came gray with light rain. Maya rose at 6, ate the breakfast Ellen had prepared despite the knot in her stomach. On the drive, they passed rows of old houses before reaching a red brick building with tall windows, the Metropolitan Academy. The stone floor of the lobby bore the sheen of years like silent bars of music. Maya had been here once, long ago, when her father brought her to a master class. Back then, everything felt towering and distant. Today, everything was just as tall but no longer unreachable. They entered a small office. The door opened. Marcus Sterling sat behind the desk, slender frame, gray hair, eyes built not for seeing, but for measuring. He did not rise. "Miss Carter, I presume," he said. "Your circumstances unusual. This academy has standards, we cannot risk them." Maya bowed her head slightly. "Yes, sir." Sterling retrieved a stack of sheets. Day 1, Bach Partita No. 2 in C minor Sinfonia. You have until 10 p.m. to prepare. No coaching during official practice time. Performance at noon tomorrow before 5 judges. He handed her the score. The dense black notes gleamed like rain against glass. "Room 15, he said, lowering his head to write, ending the meeting. Room 15 sat at the quiet end of a hallway. The piano wasn't new, but its keys were even its action responsive. Maya spread the score, marked it with pencil. First read slowly. Ellen reminded her from a chair in the corner, then fell silent. Maya worked bar by bar, stepping carefully as if across slick stones. Bach was a woven tapestry, each strand distinct yet the whole seamless. An hour in, she stumbled over sudden sharps and flats. 2 hours in, she pinned down fingerings to keep the legato unbroken. By noon, Ellen brought a sandwich and water. "Eat, then nap 15 minutes," she said. Maya rested her head on her coat, drifting off to the smell of wood and music paper. In the afternoon, she stitched hands together, mind forced to walk 2 parallel roads. Sometimes the left lagged. Sometimes the right missed its step. She carved the piece into small bites, chewing each carefully. By 6 o'clock she could play it, start to finish without falling. But that was only the bones. The flesh was the voice of the piece, and it was still hoarse. From 6 to 8 she worked on tone, the weight of the left, the glide of the right. The breath pressed into the entry. Ellen checked her watch. 10 minutes rest. Water. Look at the rain outside. Maya obeyed, her heartbeat settling a notch lower. Near 10 o'clock she began committing it to memory. That strange moment when you stare into nothing and your hands still know where to go, that's when the brain moves raw practice into quick access. "Enough," Ellen said at 9:55, standing. "Let's go." "Just 5 more minutes," Maya pleaded. Ellen shook her head. We agreed. That night, Maya lay on the living room couch, rain tapping the roof, eyes fixed on the lamp's halo. She practiced in her mind left-hand entries, spots where she mustn't breathe, places where she had to breathe exactly half a beat. When sleep came, it wasn't a sudden collapse, but a blanket pulled just in time. The next morning, she rose at 7. Breakfast went down lightly, but enough. By 8, they were back in room 15. Maya dove straight into the death spots, playing so slowly, each note was like a pebble placed in its hole. At 11, Ellen gathered the score, closed the lid. Enough. Now it's about keeping the hands warm and the head clear. They walked the hall, washed hands, drank water. From backstage, Maya looked into the recital hall, a warm wooden chamber, a grand piano gleaming like a flat black lake. At noon sharp, she stepped out. 5 judges sat in the front row, Sterling in the center, face unreadable. Maya adjusted the bench, tested the pedals, exhaled slowly. She thought of her father's trick, counting 1, 2, not to keep time, but to remind the heart it could keep its pace. She placed her hands, began. The opening bars she crossed cautiously as if over thin ice. Then gradually the ice stopped cracking. The lower voice steadied, the upper line trembled. Less phrases began to breathe. There were 2, maybe 3 stumbles, a blurred note, a late entry, but she did not stop, did not shrink back in fear of mistakes. She carried the final section like a tray filled with water, setting it down with nothing spilled. When the last note faded, she looked up. The panel bent to write. Sterling lowered his eyes to his paper. "Thank you, Miss Carter," he said. 3 o'clock, my office for day 2's assignment. Outside, Maya exhaled like a swimmer finishing a long pool. Ellen handed her a bottle of water, her hand brushing Maya's shoulder. "Good," she said. "Now, lunch a 10-minute walk and forget it until 2:45. At 10 to 3, they stood at Sterling's door. He slid another stack of sheets across. Day 2. Chopin ballet, he said, eyes never lifting from his schedule. Maya took it, feeling the torrents of notes cascade like schools of silver fish. On the way back to room 15, the rain had stopped a thin sun breaking over the stone walk. She opened the score pencil flying mapping structure marking modulations, circling the left-hand swells that might overwhelm. She sat, drew a long breath. And once more, room 15 closed its door, holding inside a girl beginning the strangest work in the world, turning fear into music. She received the Chopin ballad at 3 in the afternoon, the paper still smelling of fresh ink. On the way back to room 15, the rain had just ended, and a thin stripe of sunlight spread across the dark stone path. As soon as the door closed, Maya opened the score pencil, darting to mark the structure theme development, climax descent, coda. She sat upright, tested a few broken chords to gauge the resistance of the keys. The instrument felt slightly heavy today. Good weight kept sound from shattering at high peaks. For the first 2 hours, she read slowly like someone feeling for each step on a staircase in the dark. With Chopin, breath was as vital as fingers. Ellen reminded her to set a small clock on the lid, not for counting beats, but to ensure the silence between phrases was long enough. As the right hand began to sing in soft legato, the left learned to pulse like a listener's heartbeat. When the torrents of notes cascaded down, she grouped them in clusters so her mind processed meaning, not grains. Shifting into darker keys, she imagined clouds gathering her inner landscape, changing color. At 4:30, Ellen brought in a lunchbox, brown rice chicken breast, a few boiled vegetables, a banana. 10 minutes to eat, 15 minutes, nap then back, she said. Maya folded her coat into a pillow, closed her eyes, replayed landmarks in her mind. Rubato stretched a quarter beat on the question pulled back, an eighth on the answer. When she woke, the world seemed to move slower. A good sign her brain was sorting data. Evening brought the battle with voicing. If the left pressed too hard, the melody drowned. If the right was too thin, the climax shrank to a weak breeze. Maya shifted thumb positions to lift the top notes, practiced varying pressure across fingers as if testing brushes. At 8, Ellen made her walk the hallway 3 times, drink warm water, stretch wrists. At 9:55, Ellen tapped her shoulder. Enough. We need tomorrow more than these 5 minutes. That night, as the city closed its eyes, Maya lay sideways playing the piece in her head. She heard her father's voice. Not every stream must be a waterfall. Choose which part is the fall. Which part is the still lake? She didn't know when she fell asleep. On day 2, room 15 welcomed her with warm wood scent. She went straight for the death passage, the bridge from dream to storm. She played painfully slow, each note dropped like a pebble into water ripples, carefully not overlapping. At 11, Ellen closed the lid. Enough. Just keep your hands warm now. At noon, the recital hall opened its mouth. The 5 faces sat there again, Sterling in the center cold as stone. Maya adjusted her bench, began not pleading, not defiant, just telling. In the opening, she held breath longer than a heartbeat, letting listeners step onto the same road. At the climax, she used shallow pedal so the thick chords wouldn't muddy. On the descent, she tightened rubato like a hand gently closing. A small slip near the end, she didn't look back. The tray of water still made it to the table intact. The last note dissolved. She raised her eyes. 2 judges exchanged a quick smile. Sterling did not. "Thank you." 3 o'clock, collect day. 3, he said in a voice just above a whisper. At 10 to 3, Maya stood at his desk. Day 3, Listitude Sterling announced as cold as a clerk delivering a summons. She took the score eyes, scanning the vertical arpeggios like sheer cliffs. On the way back to room 15, Ellen murmured, "Today, don't let ego drive your hands. Train the hands first. Ego can come later." Behind the closed door, Maya built technique islands. The piece split into sections, rapid fan-like arpeggios, right-hand leaps, double chords, needing a loose wrist. She drilled left-hand patterns alone, keeping rhythm straight as a bass string. She counted aloud the 3-3-2 grouping so her brain tracked clusters, not grains. Twice, full runs tangled her fingers. The third time, she dropped tempo by 10%, kept clarity. By 7, her forearms quivered. Ellen pressed warm cloths, forced her to stretch. You cannot sacrifice day 5 for 10 minutes on day 3. By 10, the path through the hardest passage had been drawn like an arrow underwater. Enough, Ellen said. Tomorrow you need veins green and head clear. On day 3rd morning, Maya went straight into the death passage. By 11:30, Ellen shut the lid another cut, just when she wanted more. Backstage, Maya stroked the Grand's keys lightly as if greeting an old friend. When she stepped out the hall, lights fell like snow across her shoulders. She flew through the arpeggios not to boast, but to affirm the flight path. In the coda sound thinned like silk, never tearing like paper. When she bowed, her heart knocked, but didn't scatter. Sterling lifted his head, voice flat day 4, Rachmaninoff Prelude. Collect at 3. Maya left the room, standing beneath the awning as rain fell. Ellen handed her a bottle of electrolyte water. You're on the right track, she said. But right isn't enough. Rach needs blood. Maya nodded, her dark eyes deepening as if staring into a new abyss. At 3 o'clock, the Rachmaninoff Prelude lay on the desk like a dark stone. Thick chords stacked in layers, wide spans demanding not brute muscle, but the weight of gravity through the arms. Maya let her shoulders drop, channeling weight into her hands, so the chords rang full without shouting. The left hand had to become earth, the right hand had to speak upon it. Ellen set down a teapot, speaking little. While Maya pieced sections together, Ellen watched from behind, counting each time Maya's shoulders tensed. By 4:30, Maya's right forearm cried for relief. Ellen intervened 10-minute break. Frustration pricked Maya wanted to tear time like cloth. Ellen did not yield. Rach won't forgive clenched shoulders. The more you play wrong, the deeper you carve the mistake into muscle. Maya walked the hallway staring at the last rays of sun fading. She pressed her forehead to the glass, the chill running into her bones. Back at the piano, she softened her wrists, loosened her elbows like doors newly oiled. Dinner was chicken soup and a slice of bread. Ellen insisted they stop at 9:30, but at 9:25 Maya still hadn't found the color of the central section. She lifted her hands, stopped playing, and instead hummed the melody under her breath, letting her ear command her fingers. At 9:30, Ellen closed the lid. Enough. That night, exhaustion knocked like an uninvited guest. Maya lay staring at the ceiling, eyes dry, brain sputtering like an old machine. She got up, poured water in the kitchen, and saw a note Ellen had pinned on the fridge. Not perfect. Honest. Leaning against the counter, she told herself tomorrow she would not sell a copy. She would give Rachmaninoff the original of herself, heavy but breathing. Day 4 dawned. She did not run the whole piece. She sharpened 3 spots the opening planting weight, the middle angry but not roaring, the end setting the stone down gently. At 11, Ellen cut her off as always. At noon, the hall awaited. Maya dropped the first chords like stones into water resonance rippling outward. In the storm, her fingers struck like hammers in the right place, weight not strain. In the descent, she let notes land like needles, not lumps of lead. By the end, the air warmed like someone had sealed the pressure cooker after the steam escaped. Sterling lifted his head. A flicker passed his eyes, not a smile, but no longer ice. He stacked his papers, speaking slowly. Day 5. You choose the piece. Anything. All artistic standards at their highest. This is the moment. Show us who you are. The door to room 15 closed behind them. Maya laid her hands on the piano's edge, listening to the wood, the mechanism, the room breathing. Ellen sat nearby, never asking what she would choose. When you were on the street, she said, "Did you ever stop loving music?" Maya shook her head. I heard it in my mind. Some nights I wrote. You wrote, Ellen repeated, touching the hidden thread. Maya nodded, letter to my father. I wrote it at the shelter. I remember every note. Ellen met her eyes. Then we don't look for a score, we look for your heart. That afternoon, Maya opened nothing but herself. The piece began with a child's question, developed into a maze of anger and fear, ended with a thin light perched on a window bar. She lingered long on a suspended note, listening for how much breath it needed to hold its pull. When she reached the center section, her eyes shone with a light, not from stage lamps, but from memory, finding the exact language to name itself. Ellen sat motionless, nodding now and then like an audience forbidden to clap mid-movement. At 8, they stopped. Ellen refused to let her push to 10. This piece has lived in you for a year. You don't need to grind it. You need to trust it. Before bed, Maya set her father's music sheets beside her, turned off the light, and let the night pass like an old friend telling stories. Day 5. Maya woke before the alarm. She ate breakfast on time, drank water, didn't practice, just warmed her fingers with scales, loosened wrists, rolled shoulders. They reached the academy early. New faces lined the halls, students, teachers, curious onlookers. Rumors of the 5-day climber had spread. Backstage, Ellen tied her hair with a black velvet ribbon. You don't need to be perfect, she reminded, echoing the note on the fridge. You only need to be as honest as possible. Maya nodded, palm against her chest, feeling her heart strike her sternum, not too fast, not too slow. The stage manager peeked inside, nodded. The door creaked open. The lights fell like a summons. Maya touched the piano's edge, felt the warmth of wood, the chill of keys. She sat, scanned the packed hall, spotted Ellen in the front row, and unexpectedly won 2 faces from Bella Vista. Miss Carter, what will you perform? Sterling's voice rang out sharp, but not barbed. Maya inhaled, let the breath sink to her belly. A piece of my own. Letter to my father. A ripple of whispers swept the audience. She no longer heard them. Her hands met the keys. The first note rose gentle as a question, and the room began to change again. The first note rose like a child's question, why? Why did that rainy night swallow father? Why did the piano have to leave the living room? Why did the warm kitchen turn into a drafty porch? The sound was so faint that if anyone had coughed, it might have vanished. But no one coughed. The hall leaned forward as though sharing one body. Maya let the question wander a few more steps before bringing in the left hand a slow, round, warm pulse, like an adult's hand on a child's back, saying, "Go on." The notes that followed opened seams in memory, the polished wood scent of the Carter music room, evening light on the piano lid, David Carter's footsteps across the floor. She wasn't playing to tell a sad story. She was playing to give names to pieces of life that could no longer be touched by hand. The development tangled like an alleyway, sudden modulations, jagged rhythms, chords piled like suitcases left half shut. At one moment her right hand faltered. She drew a long breath, pressed weight into her left, and rebuilt the ground. In the front row, Ellen Ross did not move. She knew a true musician was not one who never erred, but one who knew how to lead mistakes back onto the musical path. Midway, the storm broke. Not a storm of showing off, but a storm of unanswered questions. Chords slanted into sharp angles, bass struck the wood frame like fists pounding from inside. A man in the middle, Rose, clenched his program tight. A freshman girl who had only come for the rumors suddenly felt her throat sting. She recognized in that anger a shade she herself had once tasted when the world flips, and no one explains why. Then the storm didn't end it tired. It drained away like a person who's wept until no tears remain. Maya lifted the pedal, returned each note clean. She widened the silences. In that hush, you could hear the footsteps of days when no one spoke your name. The breath of a child listening to rain under a tin roof, the creak of a door in the wind. She chose a thin D like a thread to bridge the passage. It quivered for a long time, then extinguished like a small lamp. The ending was not a triumphal march. It was a letter being folded shut. The childhood lullaby returned, but altered a few notes, shifted as though someone had grown older by a measure. Maya's right hand lowered gently, as if placing the letter in a drawer. The last note touched the floor of the hall and stood still like a door closed but left ajar for a hallway light to slip through. The hall held its breath. Time stretched as long as the shimmer of a steel string. Then one hand clapped. Another. A third. Without cue, people rose. The applause grew but did not crush the fragile center. It wrapped around it like a crowd protecting the still space where someone just out of a storm could stand and breathe. Maya lifted her gaze. In front of her, 4 judges stood clapping. At the center, Marcus Sterling remained seated. His face was not ice, not smile. He looked at her as a man seeing a road he had never noticed before. Sterling stood. He neither spoke nor clapped at once. He walked slowly toward the grand. His shoes tapped the wood too soft for the back row to hear, but clear to those in the front. Under her seat, Ellen clenched her hands. At the piano's side, Sterling paused half a beat. Then he clapped, not in sync with the crowd, but in sync with his own heart. The clap of a man struck at his most fragile, most guarded place. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice unlike any day before, dry enough to avoid sentiment, warm enough not to cut. "In 40 years of teaching, I've seldom heard anyone combine technical precision with emotional truth like this. You didn't just play notes, you spoke, you communicated." He turned to the board and the hall, and for that reason, I am proud to declare Maya Carter has passed the trial. I will personally recommend her for the Academy's full scholarship. Cries of bravo burst through the long applause. Students in the back rows nudged each other giddy to witness what they'd only seen in films the gatekeeper turned into the escort. Maya bowed. She found Ellen, eyes wet, smile, trembling like a string just after it sings. She spotted the 2 faces from Bella Vista, their hands over their hearts, smiling. In that moment, everything she wished to say pressed into one small whisper at the edge of her tongue. "Daddy, I did it." After the performance, the hallway swelled with people like dismissal at school. Hands reached out, congratulations, flowed questions about practice routines. Sterling approached, hand extended like one artist to another. Keep your voice, he told her. Don't let any varnish cover it. His voice rasped at the end. No one said more. They all knew silence preserved what words could not. That evening back home, Ellen fried a slice of bread, poured tea. They sat at the kitchen table without the big lights on, just enough to see each other's hands. How did you walk through 5 days like that? Ellen asked softly. Maya laid the back of her hand on her father's old music sheets on the table. I didn't walk alone, she said. Ellen nodded. In that short answer, she heard many names. David Carter, Ellen Ross strangers at Bella Vista teachers, yet unmet children asleep in cars somewhere in the city. Tomorrow, Ellen said, we'll go to the office to sign the scholarship papers. Maya nodded, and the day after she smiled, we'll do nothing. We'll walk, eat ice cream, and you won't touch the piano until evening. Maya laughed. She felt light as though setting down a heavy backpack. Yet, under that lightness, another current had begun to flow. What will I do with this gift? That night, Maya slept dreamlessly. And in the morning, when sunlight touched the windowsill, she woke with the same feeling she'd had as a child. Rising early for a trip to the sea, before her lay a vast shoreline, and she knew she had a boat. 6 months passed the way a piece of music finds its proper breath. At the Metropolitan Academy, Maya Carter lived on a clock technique in the morning ensemble at noon, analysis in the afternoon chamber concerts at night. She matured the way sound matures, not loud, just deeper. Dr. Ellen Ross remained the steady anchor at the end of each day, a modest dinner. One short reminder, a timely touch on the hand. Marcus Sterling dropped by the practice room now, and then never lecturing long. He'd toss a dry line into the air transition's loose keep, the spine then vanish, leaving the sense that someone had just straightened your back. Tonight was the annual gala. The great hall shone like an opened music box, deep red carpet, warm wooden, vaulting, a grand at center stage, gleaming like a midnight lake. Maya stood in the wings, simple black dress, velvet ribbon in her hair. Her hands were steady, her heartbeat even as a metronome forgotten somewhere but still doing its job. In the front row, Ellen Ross sat, tall eyes bright with pride. Beside her was Sarah Carter, Maya's mother, hair neat, skin with color. Again, eyes that had relearned how to look toward a long future. Over these 6 months, Sarah had moved through treatment like a person moving through a storm, small steps, steady steps. Ellen made the first call to tie the thread back together. She's going far. If you want it, your place is the front row. Maya's name was called. She stepped out and bowed. I'll be performing. Letter to my father. She said into the mic, voice small but free of any tremor. She sat. The lid reflected a sliver of her face. She didn't look at it. She looked into the remembered gaze of David Carter, half smile, half stern, solid as ever. The first note rose no longer the desperate question of 6 months ago. It was the gentle greeting of an adult returning to a familiar room. Maya didn't play to prove. She played to share. In the storm section, she didn't hurl stones into water. She dropped a question and let it echo, wear down, resolve itself. In the ending, the childhood lullaby returned, but changed. Her right hand laid a blanket of sound over the hall, warm enough, never heavy. When the last note dissolved, the hall stood, the applause swelled like a tide. In the VIP row, Marcus Sterling didn't just clap. He stood and said clearly, bravo. He made no effort to hide the water in his eyes. Ellen turned to Sarah. The two women clasped hands, each holding the other's breath steady. Backstage was as noisy as dismissal after school. Critics pulled notebooks, patrons offered cards, students asked to schedule shared practice, Faculty nodded congratulations. Sterling came forward, hand outstretched. "Keep your voice. Don't let any varnish cover it." He paused half a beat, then added, "And remember, going far isn't only speed, it's direction." Maya asked to step out of the crowd for a moment. Ellen understood 15 minutes. Take tissues. Sarah waited in a small room behind the stage. They looked at each other for a second, then embraced. No words at first. Some things are narrowed by speech. When Sarah spoke, her voice didn't break. "I'm sorry, and thank you for moving forward even when I stopped." Maya smiled, pressing her forehead to her mother's. "Thank you, too, for coming back." 3 months earlier, Maya and a few friends at the academy started hidden harmonies every Saturday. They took portable keyboards to a shelter, beginner lessons, ear training, lending books. They'd already awarded 2 small scholarships a 15-year-old boy who voiced guitar chords like someone who had lived with music, a 12-year-old girl who sang barely above a whisper but made everyone nearby go quiet. Word slipped beyond the school. Emails arrived inviting talks, an instrument company hinted at sponsorship, and a woman who refused to give her name sent funds so the kids can have keys to press. Maya didn't rush to yes. She wanted to move on honesty, not on banners. Late that night, Maya walked through quiet streets. The city was lightly wet. Yellow lamps fell on the sidewalk like rests on a staff. She turned onto the street with the Bella Vista sign. The restaurant was dark. Only a dim light glowed in the kitchen. Through the glass, the old piano still lay in the corner lid, closed as if asleep. She placed her hand on the cold pane. Her breath made a small ring of fog. "Thank you," she whispered, "for those 5 minutes." A sound behind her made her turn. Blake Turner, the manager from that day, stood at the side door with a ring of keys. He hesitated, then smiled with the sincerity of someone who had relearned decency. "I'm here late doing inventory. Would you like to come in? No patrons, but there's me and that old piano." They stepped inside. The room was empty chairs, flipped tables stacked. Blake turned on a warm light for the piano's corner. "I have something," he said, offering an envelope. Regulars put together a small fund after that day. They wanted to do something right by the story. "If it fits, I'd like Bella Vista to be Hidden Harmonies' last Saturday stop. We'll open early for class, cover bread and milk, and..." He glanced at the piano. "I think it's time to give this instrument away. It should go on living." Maya stood still, hand resting on the lid. The glass, the wood, the faraway kitchen, everything returned but reversed. Once she entered asking for 5 minutes. Tonight, the place that had shut its door opened a classroom. She nodded. "Thank you. We'll keep it where it belongs between small hands." Blake nodded. "One more thing," he said, voice turning husky. "I owe you a proper apology." I laughed that day. Tonight, I want to make it right. Maya smiled, not stretching the moment you already have. They lifted the lid. The old piano wasn't perfect. A few ivory chips, a slightly cloudy middle register. But when the first note sounded, the empty room changed the way it had 6 months before. Warmer, wider. Maya played a short excerpt from a piece she'd just written, Hidden Harmonies Suite, 3 movements, Shelter Bridge, Home. Blake stood quietly, hands in pockets, eyes dropped to his shoes, unable to hide the look of someone seeing his best mirror. Next Saturday morning, the community center near Bella Vista opened early. The old piano had been moved in, set in a corner of the hall, a small sign taped to it, a gift from Bella Vista. Children trickled in shoes, shuffling on the floor. The little ones eyed the piano like a gentle, unfamiliar animal. Ellen Ross came carrying a tray of cookies and milk. Sarah lugged a box of music books, laughing and catching her breath like a marathon finisher. Marcus Sterling appeared in the doorway, hands in his coat pockets not quite entering. He watched for 5 minutes, gave the slightest nod, and left. Maya sat at the bench and clapped to gather the kids. Today, she said, each of you will press your first note. She placed the hand of a thin boy named Jaden on middle C. No need to be strong, just be true, he pressed. The note rang thin, trembling, but his. Jaden looked up. A door cracked open in his eyes. Great job, Maya said, then made room for a little girl with curls named Lila. She pressed E, then G, smiling quietly. In the corner, Ellen watched the children like saplings. Sarah wiped a milk spill from the table. Blake leaned on the doorframe, cookie box in hand, his eyes suddenly gentle. Midway through, Maya played a short passage from Letter to My Father, the lullaby, not to show off, to tell the kids that everyone has a letter to write. You can write with words, she said, or with notes. What matters is starting. At the end, the kids poured into the yard, laughter scattering like sunlight. Maya stayed alone with the piano. She touched a D, listened to the vibration roll through the wood, and thought about the year behind her, from the cold glass of Bella Vista to the warm lights of a gala, from 5 minutes of mockery to a crowded morning class. She took out her phone and added a line to her notes, anchor hidden harmonies, Bella Vista as a monthly site. Write thank you letters to anonymous donors. Send piano photos to the team. On the way home, the wind combed the trees. Maya turned into Ellen's house, opening the door as gently as lifting a piano lid. The living room smelled of fresh baking. Ellen looked up. How was the morning? Busy Maya said. And beautiful. Sarah peeked from the kitchen. Did anyone play their first note yet? Many Maya smiled. So many. That night, when the city lit up, Maya returned to her music room. On the piano ledge lay David Carter's old sheets, the edges curled like small wings. She placed her hand on the lid, not opening it yet. She stood listening to a silence, warm as a hallway light. Then she sat. Not to practice for the next concert, to write down what the morning had opened. She pressed the first note of a new piece, Bridge of Light, for the small hands that had just found their path into music. The note sounded small but clear, and somewhere in the city someone felt a little lighter. The girl who once played for a piece of bread now played to open doors for others. And the story is best when it doesn't close. Every child's first note will be this chapter's ending and the opening of countless others. Maya Carter's story closes on a first note, given to someone else, from 5 minutes of laughter at Bella Vista to hidden harmonies where each child presses the first note of their life. Music saved her, and now she uses music to open hearts. A question for you: if you had only 5 minutes to prove yourself like Maya, what would you do and for whom? Tell us in the comments. I'd love to read your story. If this video touched you, please share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe, turn on the bell so you don't miss the journeys to come. Thank you for listening.